My best friend Emma died 3 weeks ago. Ovarian cancer, stage 4, went fast once they found it. I was with her at the end, holding her hand in that sterile hospice room that smelled like antiseptic and death. Her last words to me were, "You promised, Danny. You promised we'd never tell." And then she was gone. I'm breaking that promise now. I'm 34 years old, and I've kept the secret for 24 years, but I can't carry it alone anymore. Emma can't be hurt by this now. And maybe, after all these years, someone needs to know what we found in the woods behind Millbrook Elementary School in the summer of 1999. Let me start at the beginning. Emma Thornton and I met in first grade in our small town of Ridgemont, Ohio, population 3,000. One of those places where everyone knows everyone, where nothing ever happens, where kids grow up either leaving as fast as they can or staying forever and becoming their parents. Emma lived 3 houses down from me on Oakwood Street, and from the moment we met, we were inseparable. We were the weird kids. Emma was too smart, too intense, always reading books meant for high schoolers and asking questions that made teachers uncomfortable. I was too quiet, too skinny, the kid who drew monsters in the margins of his homework and preferred talking to trees than other kids. We found each other in the way that misfit kids do, and we became everything to each other. Best friends, partners in crime, the two against the world. The summer between 4th and 5th grade was magic. We were 10 years old, and it was one of those perfect Midwestern summers where the days stretched on forever, where the fireflies came out at dusk and we'd catch them in mason jars, where we rode our bikes until the streetlights came on and our parents called us home. Behind our elementary school was Thornwood Forest, about 50 acres of oak and maple trees, with a creek running through it. It wasn't really a forest, more like a large woods, but to us it was vast and full of possibilities. Our parents let us play there during the summer. It was considered safe, and most of the town kids spent their summers building forts and having stick sword fights among the trees. Emma and I had our special spot, deeper in the woods than most kids went. We'd found it the previous summer, a small clearing with a massive oak tree in the center, its roots creating natural seats and hideaways. We called it the throne room, and we'd spent hours there reading, making up stories, pretending we were anywhere but Ridgemont, Ohio. It was July 15, 1999. I remember the date because it was Emma's birthday. She'd turned 10 the day before, but her parents had to work, so we were celebrating just the two of us, the way we liked it. I'd saved my allowance to buy her the 3rd Harry Potter book, which had just come out. She'd gotten me a new sketchbook. We were in the throne room, taking turns reading chapters out loud, when Emma's dog Biscuit, who'd followed us into the woods, started barking like crazy. He was a dopey golden retriever, usually friendly with everyone, but he was losing his mind, barking and growling at something in the underbrush. "Biscuit, shut up!" Emma yelled, but he wouldn't stop. He kept barking and then suddenly took off running, crashing through the bushes. We chased after him, more annoyed than worried. But he led us deeper into the woods than we'd ever gone before, to a part where the trees grew thick and the sunlight barely penetrated. After about 10 minutes of crashing through brambles and calling his name, we found him. He was sitting in front of a small ravine, still barking, but different now. Scared barking. Whimpering between barks. "What is it, boy?" I asked, coming up beside him. Then I looked down into the ravine and my blood went cold. There was a car down there. An old blue sedan, almost completely covered in vines and fallen leaves. It had clearly been there for years, maybe decades. Nature had almost reclaimed it entirely. "Whoa," Emma breathed beside me. "How did that get down there? We should have left. Should have run back home and told an adult." But we were 10, and we were curious, and we felt invincible in the way that 10-year-olds do. We climbed down into the ravine, Biscuit whimpering behind us but not following. The car was a Buick, maybe from the 1970s or early 80s. I'd seen cars like it in old photos. The windows were too dirty and covered in grime to see inside. Emma tried the door handle. It was stuck at first, then opened with a horrible screech of metal on metal. The smell hit us immediately. Even after all those years, even with the windows closed and nature trying to cover it up, the smell was there. Sweet and rotten and wrong. We should have run then. But we didn't. Emma pulled her t-shirt up over her nose and leaned in. I did the same, peering over her shoulder. There were bones in the driver's seat. A skeleton, still wearing clothes, a brown jacket, jeans. The flesh was long gone, but there was still some hair attached to the skull. Brown hair, going gray. On the seat beside the skeleton was a briefcase, and in the back seat were more bones. Smaller bones. Child-sized. Emma grabbed my hand so hard it hurt. We stood there, frozen, staring at what we'd found. A car that had crashed or been hidden in this ravine. A man in the front seat. A child in the back. Dead for years, maybe decades, hidden in the woods while the whole town went about their lives just a mile away. "Danny," Emma whispered. "Danny, we have to tell someone." I nodded, couldn't speak. We backed away from the car, climbed out of the ravine. We were both shaking. Biscuit pressed against our legs, and we held onto him as we found our way back to the throne room, then back toward the edge of the woods. But before we reached the street, Emma stopped. "Wait," she said. "Danny, wait." "What?" "Emma, we have to tell." "I know. But Danny, think about it. What if?" She looked scared, younger than I'd ever seen her look. "What if it's someone bad? What if whoever did this is still out there? What if they come after us for finding it?" "Then we definitely need to tell," I said. "But what if no one believes us? What if we get in trouble for being in the woods that far?" She was working herself up, talking faster. "What if they think we did something? What if?" "Emma, we're 10. No one's going to think we did it." "But what if?" She grabbed both my hands. "Danny, I'm scared. I don't want to tell. I don't want anyone to know we found it. Can't we just forget we saw it?" I should have insisted. Should have dragged her to the police station. But I was 10, and I was scared too, and Emma was my best friend, and when she looked at me with those wide, terrified eyes, I couldn't say no to her. "Okay," I said. "We won't tell." "Promise?" she asked. "Blood oath promise." We'd read about blood oaths in one of her fantasy books. We'd made them before. For smaller things, using a safety pin to prick our fingers and press them together. "Blood oath," I agreed. We did it right there, at the edge of the woods. Pricked our fingers, pressed them together, and swore we'd never tell anyone about what we found. It felt serious and magical and terrifying all at once. Then we went home and tried to pretend it never happened. But of course, it did happen. And we couldn't forget. The guilt ate at me for weeks. Every time I saw a police car, I wanted to flag it down and confess. Every time I saw a news broadcast about missing persons, I wondered if the people in that car were on some family's list of disappeared loved ones. People whose family never got closure. Emma seemed to handle it better, or at least she pretended to. She refused to talk about it. The one time I brought it up, a few weeks after we found the car, she cut me off. "We promised, Danny. We swore. We can't ever tell, ever." After that, I stopped trying. We went back to the woods that summer, but never to that part. Never anywhere near the ravine. We stuck to the throne room and the creek and the well-traveled paths. And as the summer ended and school started again, it became easier to push the memory down, to pretend it was just a nightmare or something we'd imagined. But it wasn't. It was real. And somewhere in those woods, there were still 2 people waiting to be found. Years passed. Emma and I stayed best friends through middle school and high school. We had other friends, other interests, even dated other people, but we were still Danny and Emma, the weird kids from Oakwood Street who understood each other in ways no one else did. We never talked about the car. It became this silent thing between us, this shared secret that we never acknowledged but that was always there, underneath everything else. Senior year, Emma got into Northwestern on a full scholarship. I got into Columbus College of Art and Design. We were both leaving Ridgemont, which felt right. We'd always known we were meant for somewhere else. The night before we left for college, we sat on Emma's porch like we had 1,000 times before. It was late August, muggy and warm, the cicadas screaming in the trees. We were drinking stolen beers from her dad's fridge, feeling adult and nostalgic and scared about what came next. "Danny," Emma said, out of nowhere. "That thing. In the woods. That summer." My heart started pounding. We hadn't spoken about it in 8 years. "Emma. We should have told someone," she said quietly. "We should have told. We still could," I said. She shook her head. No. It's too late now. They'd want to know why we waited. We'd get in trouble, or look crazy, or, no. We can't. But I need you to know that I know it was wrong. That I'm sorry I made you promise. I could have said no, I told her. It wasn't just you. We were kids. We were scared. We were, she agreed. Then, but we're still keeping the secret, right? For always. I didn't want to. God, I didn't want to. But I looked at Emma, my best friend, and I said, for always. We went to college. We visited each other on breaks, drifted a little as we made new lives, but stayed in touch. Emma became a lawyer, fierce and brilliant. I became a graphic designer, decent and getting by. We both dated people, had relationships that didn't quite work out. We both seemed to have trouble with intimacy, with letting people really know us. I wonder now if that secret between us made it impossible to be fully honest with anyone else. 10 years after college, Emma moved back to Ohio, not Ridgemont but Columbus, only an hour away from where I'd settled. We started seeing each other regularly again, falling back into the easy friendship we'd always had. We still never talked about the car. Then, 2 years ago, Emma was diagnosed with cancer. Ovarian cancer, stage 3, aggressive. She fought it hard: chemo, surgery, more chemo. For a while, it looked like she might beat it. But it came back last year, stage 4 this time, and the doctors said there wasn't much they could do. She deteriorated fast. I visited her as often as I could, sat with her through treatments, held her hair when she was sick, tried to make her laugh when she felt strong enough. We talked about everything: our childhoods, our regrets, the people we'd loved and lost, the dreams we'd had. Everything except the car. I wanted to bring it up. Wanted to tell her we should finally report it, that it wasn't too late, that those people deserved to be found. But she was dying, and it seemed cruel to burden her with it then. Until that last day. 3 weeks ago. In the hospice, when she could barely speak, when I knew it was almost over. She squeezed my hand and said, "You promised, Danny. You promised we'd never tell." And I said, "I won't. I promise." She died 6 hours later. At her funeral, her mother came up to me, crying, and said, "You were her best friend her whole life, Danny. She loved you so much. Thank you for being there for her." And I stood there, accepting her gratitude, knowing I'd helped Emma keep a secret that meant 2 people never got justice, never got found, never got the dignity of a proper burial. I couldn't do it anymore. 2 days after the funeral, I went to the Ridgemont police station. I asked to speak to someone about a cold case. They sent me to Detective Mike Carson, a guy maybe 50 years old who looked tired and skeptical. I told him everything. About finding the car when we were 10. About the skeleton in the driver's seat and the smaller bones in the back. About the blood oath and the secret we'd kept for 24 years. He listened without interrupting, taking notes. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "You understand," he finally said, "that withholding information about potential crimes is a serious matter." "I know," I said. "I was 10. And then I was too scared, and then it had been too long. But I'm telling you now." He studied me. "Can you show us where this car is?" "I think so. It's been a long time, but I remember." The next day, I met Detective Carson and 3 other officers at the edge of Thornwood Forest. The throne room was still there. I found it easily. From there, I tried to retrace the path Biscuit had led us on, 24 years ago. It took hours. The woods had changed, trails had shifted, my memory was imperfect. But eventually, I found it. The ravine. And down at the bottom, almost completely covered in vegetation now, the blue Buick. The officers called in forensic teams. I watched from above as they carefully made their way down, photographed everything, eventually opened the car door. The bones were still there. All these years later, still there, waiting. It took them 3 weeks to process everything, to run the DNA, to check missing persons databases. Detective Carson called me yesterday with the results. The adult skeleton belonged to Robert Mitchell, age 38, reported missing in June 1982. He'd been an accountant in Ridgemont, married with 2 kids. One day he'd left work and never came home. His car had never been found. His wife had reported him missing, but there were no leads, no clues. Eventually, the case went cold. The child's skeleton was his daughter, Amy Mitchell, age 7. She'd been in the car with him when he disappeared. The working theory is that it was a murder-suicide. Robert Mitchell had been embezzling money from his firm. They discovered it shortly after he disappeared. Rather than face the consequences, he'd driven out to the woods with his daughter, parked in that ravine where no one would find them, and used carbon monoxide poisoning. The car running, the windows up, both of them falling asleep and never waking up. Amy's mother, Robert's widow, is still alive. She's 74 now. Detective Carson said that when they told her they'd found her husband and daughter, she broke down. For 41 years, she hadn't known what happened to them. She'd spent 4 decades wondering, hoping, grieving without closure. Now she knows. Now she can bury them properly. Now she has answers, even if they're terrible answers. Because Emma and I were scared kids who made a promise, this woman suffered for an extra 24 years without knowing what happened to her family. I don't know how to live with that. I don't know how to forgive myself, or Emma, or the stupid, scared 10-year-olds we were. Detective Carson said I won't face any charges. I was a minor when I found the car, and statute of limitations applies to my failure to report after I turned 18. He said I did the right thing by coming forward eventually. But it doesn't feel like the right thing. The right thing would have been telling in 1999. The right thing would have been being braver than I was. Emma can't apologize now. Can't make amends. She's gone, and she died still holding on to that secret, still wanting it kept. I've broken our blood oath. I've told the police, and now I'm telling all of you. The secret that defined our friendship, that shaped both our lives in ways I'm only now understanding, is out. Mrs. Mitchell sent me a letter. Detective Carson gave it to me yesterday. In it, she said thank you. She said that she'd spent 41 years imagining the worst, wondering if her daughter had suffered, if they were alive somewhere without her. She said that knowing the truth, even though it was awful, was better than not knowing. She said Amy had been afraid of the dark, and the thought of her being lost and scared had haunted her every night for 4 decades. Now she knew Amy had been with her father, that it had been quick, that she hadn't been alone or afraid for long. She forgave me for waiting. She said a child couldn't be expected to understand the weight of what we'd found, and that I'd done the right thing by coming forward eventually. But I don't forgive myself. I've been thinking a lot about that summer. About Emma and me, 10 years old, so sure we were doing the right thing by keeping our promise. We thought we were protecting ourselves, protecting each other. We thought we were being loyal friends. But loyalty to each other shouldn't have meant abandoning loyalty to those people in the car. To their families. To the truth. I've been seeing a therapist. She says I need to have compassion for my younger self. That 10-year-old Danny who was scared and didn't know better. She says Emma was probably carrying unprocessed trauma from that discovery, that finding bodies at that age could have psychological impacts neither of us understood or got help for. Maybe she's right. I know Emma struggled with anxiety her whole life, with intrusive thoughts, with feeling like she was responsible for terrible things. I wonder now how much of that came from that summer day in the woods. I went back to Ridgemont last week for the funeral, the real one, the proper one. Robert and Amy Mitchell were buried side by side in Ridgemont Cemetery, 41 years after they died. Mrs. Mitchell was there, along with Amy's older brother, who was 9 when his sister disappeared and is now 50. There were other family members, some friends who'd known them. I stood in the back, watching. Mrs. Mitchell saw me and came over afterward. She's a small woman, white-haired, with Amy's eyes. I recognized them from the photo Detective Carson had shown me. "You're Daniel?" she asked. I nodded. She hugged me. This woman I'd indirectly caused 4 decades of pain, and she hugged me. "Thank you," she said into my shoulder. "Thank you for giving them back to me." I started crying. Right there in the cemetery, I broke down. All the guilt and grief I'd been carrying for 24 years, plus the grief of losing Emma, it all came out at once. Mrs. Mitchell held me while I cried, this stranger who had more reason to hate me than anyone, and she told me it was okay. That I was just a child. That I'd done the right thing in the end. I don't know if I'll ever believe that. But I'm trying. The police investigation is ongoing. They've reopened other cold cases from that era, looking for potential connections. They've interviewed people who knew Robert Mitchell, trying to understand his state of mind in those final days. They've confirmed that he'd been stealing from his firm, that he was about to be exposed, that he probably panicked. What I keep thinking about is Amy. 7 years old, getting in the car with her dad, probably thinking they were going on an adventure. Maybe he told her they were going to the park, or out for ice cream. Maybe she was excited. And then he drove them into those woods, to that ravine, and she died without understanding why. Emma and I used to imagine the people in the car. In those early days after we found them, before we got good at not talking about it, we'd whisper theories to each other. We thought maybe it was a gangster who'd been murdered. Or a spy. Or someone who'd faked their death to escape the witness protection program. We made up elaborate stories because the reality that it was probably something mundane and tragic was too much for us. We never imagined a little girl. We saw the small bones and we knew, but we didn't let ourselves really think about it. A 7-year-old, like we'd been just 3 years before. A kid who'd had favorite toys and TV shows and friends at school. A kid who'd died scared and confused. If we'd told in 1999, Mrs. Mitchell could have buried her daughter while she was still young enough to visit the grave regularly. Amy's brother could have had closure before he turned 18, before he started his own adult life. They could have mourned properly instead of existing in that horrible limbo of not knowing. That's what I can't forgive myself for. Not the initial silence. We were 10, we were scared, I understand that. But every year after. Every birthday, every holiday, every time I saw a missing persons poster or heard about a cold case being solved. I could have said something. I was 18, 20, 25, 30. I was an adult who knew better, and I stayed silent because I'd made a promise to my best friend. Some promises shouldn't be kept. I've been going through old photos of Emma and me. There are dozens from that summer, us on our bikes, at the public pool, in the woods at the throne room. In every photo from after July 15th, if you look closely, we look different. A little older, a little sadder. The innocence is gone from our eyes. That's what that secret cost us, I think. Our childhoods. We couldn't be fully kids after that, not really. We carried the weight of those bodies with us every day. It changed us in ways we couldn't articulate, couldn't even recognize until years later. Emma never had kids. Neither have I. I wonder if that was part of it, some subconscious fear of bringing children into a world where terrible things happen, where 7-year-olds die in cars in the woods and no one finds them for decades. She never married either. Had relationships, some serious, but nothing that stuck. I'm the same way. Maybe we'd already used up all our intimacy on each other, on keeping each other's secret. Maybe we'd learned too young that people you love can disappear, can die, can take pieces of you with them. Or maybe I'm reading too much into it. Maybe we were just busy with our careers, maybe we just didn't meet the right people, maybe it has nothing to do with what happened when we were 10. But I don't think so. I think that day in the woods marked us permanently. I think we never fully recovered from it, and we never could as long as we kept the secret. Detective Carson told me something interesting last week. He said that in his experience, secrets like this don't stay buried. They have a way of coming out, eventually. Sometimes it takes years or decades, but the truth usually surfaces. People think they can carry secrets forever, he said. But secrets are heavy. They get heavier the longer you carry them. Eventually, most people can't take the weight anymore. Emma carried it to her grave. Literally. Her last words were about keeping the secret. But even in death, she couldn't keep it buried. Because I'm here, telling it. Breaking our blood oath. Letting the truth out. I think part of her wanted that. When she said you promised, there was something in her eyes. Relief, maybe. Like she knew I was going to tell, and some part of her was glad. Or maybe that's what I tell myself to feel better about breaking my promise to my dying best friend. I don't know. I don't know anything anymore except that secrets are poison, and I poisoned both of us with this one. The town of Ridgemont has been in the news. National news picked up the story, bodies found after 41 years, thanks to deathbed confession. Except it wasn't a deathbed confession, it was me, breaking a promise after Emma died. But close enough, I guess. My parents still live in Ridgemont. My mom called me after the news broke, crying, asking why I never told her. Why I carried this alone for so long? I didn't have a good answer. Because Emma asked me not to? Because I was scared? Because after a certain point, too much time had passed and it felt impossible to come forward? All of those reasons, and none of them good enough. The weirdest part is the people who've reached out to tell me I did the right thing. Strangers on the internet, people from Ridgemont I barely remember, even some true crime podcasters wanting to interview me. They think I'm brave for coming forward. I'm not brave. Brave would have been telling in 1999. This is just, finally doing what I should have done 24 years ago. There's nothing brave about that. Mrs. Mitchell gave me something at the funeral. A photo of Amy, taken a few months before she disappeared. In it, she's wearing a yellow dress, smiling at the camera, gap-toothed and happy. She has freckles across her nose and her hair in pigtails. I want you to have this, Mrs. Mitchell said. So you can remember her as she was. Not as what you found. I keep the photo on my desk now. When I look at it, I try to imagine what Amy would have been like if she'd lived. She'd be 48 now, maybe with kids of her own, maybe doing something amazing with her life. All that potential, all those years, stolen by her father's desperation and cowardice. And hidden for 24 extra years because Emma and I were scared kids who made a stupid promise. I'm planning to move away from Ohio. Too many memories here, too many ghosts. I've been thinking about Portland, or maybe somewhere completely different. A fresh start, though I know you can't really run from guilt. It comes with you wherever you go. Before I leave, I'm going back to Thornwood Forest one more time. To the throne room, to say goodbye to it and to Emma and to our childhood. To the ravine, to pay my respects to Robert and Amy Mitchell. And then I'm done with secrets. Done with promises that require silence. Done with loyalty that means abandoning truth. Emma was my best friend. I loved her more than anyone else in my life. But our friendship was built partially on a lie, on a shared complicity in something wrong. And I think that poisoned it, in the end. We were so close, knew each other so well, but we could never fully move past what we'd found and chosen to hide. If I could go back and talk to 10-year-old Danny and Emma in those woods, after we'd found the car, I'd tell us, it's okay to be scared. It's okay to not know what to do. But go home and tell an adult. Tell your parents, tell the police, tell someone. Don't let fear make you keep a secret that isn't yours to keep. But I can't go back. None of us can. We can only move forward with the knowledge of what we did and didn't do, and try to make better choices going forward. So I'm telling the story. I'm breaking the blood oath. I'm letting the secret out into the world, where maybe it can't hurt anyone anymore. Emma, wherever you are, I hope you understand. I hope some part of you is relieved that the truth is finally out. I hope Amy and Robert Mitchell are at peace now that they've been found and properly laid to rest. And I hope that 10-year-old versions of us, the kids we were that summer before everything changed, can forgive us for what we did and didn't do. I'm sorry, Emma. I'm sorry, Mrs. Mitchell. I'm sorry, Amy. I'm sorry it took me 24 years to find the courage you deserved from me on day one. But the truth is out now. The secret is told. And maybe, eventually, that will be enough.